This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard. It's a real privilege to be with you today. We've got a really cool topic for you today. It's a little different than some of the things we normally talk about, but it really weaves into a lot of the things that we have been talking about over the past few weeks, that it's going to be a really good value for you. Today, we're going to be talking about something that we all dread, we all kind of avoid, and we all kind of skirt around and kind of ignore, but yet it's on our minds because we have mirrors in our homes and we look at ourselves every day. And so today we're going to be talking about aging, getting older. Who loves getting older, right? Everybody. Today we're going to be talking about that topic, but in a number of different ways, but also how to combat that, prevent that, deal with that, and navigate through that so that we can all live, more fulfilled and happier lives. Today, we've got a true expert in this space. Actually got the PhD, wrote a book. We're going to hear about all those things. She is the expert on this topic. Today, we have the privilege of having Corinne Auman on the show. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Corinne because she's a pretty impressive lady. She's the president of Choice Care Navigators. All right. Choice Care Navigators is an aging and elderly care management consulting firm based out of Greensboro, North Carolina. She's also an author of a book called Keenagers. We're going to learn more about that here in a minute. That book outlines how to get the most out of life and navigate the aging process, getting older and what that means, and how to set expectations and deal with life challenges as we mature in life. So without further ado, Corinne, welcome to the Soar Higher podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Corinne, catch us up to speed. Tell us a little bit about you and your background and how the heck you got to where you are today with some of this stuff.
I, as you mentioned, have a PhD it's in developmental psychology, when my specialty is adulthood and aging. And so I knew from very early experience I wanted to work with older adults and their families. And that came from my own experience living next to my grandparents. And my grandfather passed away pretty quickly, and my mom and her sister got thrown into caregiving seemingly overnight. That's what it felt like anyway, because what they realized after my grandfather had passed away was that he had really done an excellent job protecting my grandmother, and my mom and her sister really had no idea that her dementia had progressed as far as it had, because my grandfather was doing such a good job of caregiving for her and taking care of her, so that when he passed away, all of a sudden they had to take over. And I just remember at that time thinking, why isn't there somebody who helps with this? Because they didn't know what they were doing, and they were trying to find resources, and they're both working full-time jobs, and they're raising kids, and all these things kind of, came together at once. So fast forward, I go on, I get my PhD, and I say all along, I think there should be somebody who helps you figure this stuff out. When you're caring for an aging loved one, you don't know what you don't know, and there should be someone who helps you. So that's how I got into what I do today, which is care management. That's the Choice Care Navigators company. But I got into writing the book because even though I have all that experience, all that education, working and training with older adults, when I got into this business, I really thought that I was going to be working with 45-year-old adults who were caring for 75-year-old parents. And what I realized over the years is no, I'm working with 75-year-old adults caring for 95-year-old
Mm.
parents. It's a significant difference. And if I was that wrong about who my client base was going to be and what growing older, and I'm putting growing older in quotation marks, what that really was like or what it meant, if I was that wrong with all my training and expertise, then a lot of us have it wrong about what it's going to mean to be an older adult, what you're going to be like, who's caring for who as we
Wow.
age. And so that's where the book actually ends up coming from, in the sense that I interviewed a whole bunch of people in their 50s, 60s, 70s who technically fall into the older adult category, but are amazing people living active and engaged lives and maybe caring for their still aging 85, 95 plus year old parents who also fall into this older adult category. I mean, it's really weird that you get to be 60 or 65 and we call you an older adult, and you could be an older adult for 5 decades, because there's no other time in life where we would group people who are that far apart in age together. You know, a 65-year-old is an older adult and a 105-year-old is an older adult. And so that's kind of where the Keenager, and that's Keenager with a K, that's where that term came from, because I was like, I need a way to distinguish these kind of young older adults who are really still living full lives, doing all these things, and versus what I might call true older adults, or what we stereotypically think about as older adults, who are now really your 85 plus category today.
Wow. So got into this because of your own family dynamic. You saw that there were some things going on that you just a whole new world opened up that you didn't even know about. And you're like, man, if I'm experiencing this, other people must be experiencing this. And so that ignited your passion to help people. Did you already have your PhD before that or after that, or
Oh no, all that was happening when I was in like high school and
okay.
college. So like my grandfather passed away when I was in 8th grade, and so that's when the caregiving for my grandmother took over all through my high school years, and then she didn't pass away until I was a junior in college. So I really, watched this happening for just about a decade with my mom and her sister.
My goodness. So that sounds like it really ignited this passion in you. And then you went and started pursuing the education side of it and ultimately got your PhD in this. So you've been on this journey. How long have you been doing this for now?
So I've been in the field since I finished my education in 2002. I actually started my business in 2012.
Okay.
So for a number of years, I was teaching like at colleges and universities. That's what I did primarily. And then in 2012, I actually started my business.
Yeah. Well, what made you want to go into business for yourself? It's one thing to be an expert in this space and, work for medical, care facilities and companies, but what made you want to actually open up your own business and do these types of things? Was there a certain, like a turning point or something that happened that you're like, man, I got to open my business and do this? Yeah, there's a major void here I got to fill.
Well, it was one of those things that I had been saying since I had, seen this going on with my family, that there ought to be somebody who helped you with these things. And then, you go and you get your education, and jobs look good, right? Jobs with steady paychecks look really nice. And then eventually, when we got to 2012, I'd had 2 of my children, and I was having a little bit of a transition in my work as a professor. And I just kind of looked at my husband and said, I have talked for years about starting that business. If I'm ever going to do it, I need to go ahead and do it now. And things have only gotten more complicated
Yeah.
since, I watched my mom go through this caregiving journey. Things have only gotten worse. And so in terms of the level of complexity of the caregiving healthcare world, and so if I'm ever going to start that business, I need to do it now. This is my chance. And so that's, that was the motivation, basically. And I have to say, like, I was not an entrepreneur before. I was teaching at a university, and there is some bliss in, not knowing what entrepreneurship is like. Like you don't know what you don't know in that.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is going to be great. And I'm going to help everybody, and everything's going to work out great. And as probably many of your listeners know, if they're entrepreneurs or leaders in a field, it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's quite a journey, especially when you have no experience running a business coming in.
Well, that's a great testimony, and thanks for sharing that. Not everybody's excited to talk about their testimony and their journey, and the ups and the downs. How was that journey for you? Like, what did you learn once you got into the business about business? What are some of the major kind of things that you'd pass along to people that are in business that may be in a similar, medical profession? And how does that shape how you're delivering the care and stuff that you're delivering today?
Anyone who is starting a new business, whatever that business may be, if I talk to them, I tell them something that I now know to be true. They probably don't believe me or don't want to hear what I have to say, because I think if anyone had said this to me, I probably wouldn't have believed them either, which is that you have to be prepared to give it a full 3 years of work and effort and getting the business established and getting your name out there. I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions. I'm sure there are people who have some great business idea and it takes off and they're making money in 6 months, but that is not the typical experience. I think it takes a lot, however long you think it's going to take, at least double that and maybe triple it.
Yep.
It takes so much longer to get yourself established and get a foothold, just in terms of people knowing who you are and feeling comfortable referring business to you. And I'm in a really high trust situation. If you're going to work with me to try to help figure out caregiving and navigating the healthcare system for your parents, you have to trust me, right? You have to believe that I know what I'm saying and that we're going to help you figure this out in the best way possible. And it just takes a while to get established and have people feel comfortable referring to you to say, yeah, call her. She can really help. And she can, I trust her. I know her. They will do right by you, that kind of thing. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just, it takes way more time than you think it's going to.
Well, I think that's true in a lot of different walks of life. Whether you're building a house or putting in a pool or, doing any kind of, it always takes longer. There's always something more to it. Certainly in business is complicated, and it's you got to focus your time very carefully. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you're a great testament, especially in the medical space, when you're working with people and their health and their well-being, and in the healthcare medical industry. That can be really, really tough, because one, you've got to make your money being the technician, actually sitting in front of people, walking them through the options, figuring out what the right plan is for them. But at the same time, you also have to be marketing. You also have to be putting your name out there. You have to be paying attention to your finances and make sure you're actually profitable, and all the business things that it takes to run a business, in addition to actually practicing your profession, which is talking to people and working with them on their aging, issues and challenges, right? So you have to kind of wear multiple hats at the same time, and that takes a lot of discipline and focus. And you clearly figured that out at some point. Now, did you have advisors? Did you have a business coach working with you, or did you just kind of trial and error this, or how did you get through those first couple years until you got going?
Some of both.
Okay.
I had some business coaching off and on. I became part of a mastermind group of professionals who do the same kind of work that I do, and that was tremendously helpful. It was like group coaching that we did, and just hearing that other people were going through the same struggles and problem solving together to try to figure out, okay, how do we, how are you handling that? How should I handle that? That was probably the most beneficial thing that I did. I did not find that opportunity right at first. So I think the beginning was a lot more trial and error and just kind of flying by the seat of my pants, maybe not so well at times, but that coaching really did assist.
That's awesome. Note to self, to the listeners out there, if you're not a business minded person, if you're not an entrepreneur, which there's, most people aren't in life, just born to be an entrepreneur. If you're focused in a discipline like health or legal or CPA or whatever, and you're going to do your own business, you have to be just as good at business as you are at whatever that functional area is that you're practicing, or you're going to really, really struggle. And so as early as you can, surround yourself with some experts in business, either a business coach, a mastermind group. A lot of people do that, like Corinne, or if you've got some other people in your church or, friend groups or family members that own businesses, talking through that and really understanding those dynamics is really important. So I'm going to switch gears on you, Corinne. Let's talk about the aging space. Like every day the clock ticks and we're getting older and older and older. And, most people look in the mirror like, oh, I got wrinkles here and lines there. And what about this? And what about that? And they start dealing with wills and estate plans. And there's all these dynamics of life that surround us getting older. Give us an idea of what the landscape's like out there. On one hand, they say, the experts say we're living longer lives, which creates, which is great. We can live longer lives, but also creates some challenges. But at the same time, we're living longer lives. It seems like, certainly here in America, that we're not living as healthy of lives during our life. So what's kind of a high level understanding of what's going on with people and in our health and our aging, and what's contributing to us aging well or not aging so well? Give us a good understanding of that.
That is a tall order.
That's a big question. I know.
I could go on for a long time there. I'll start with the living longer. So we are living longer than previous generations. And I think that is most evident, like in the example I gave earlier when I talked about, older adult start thinking about people being an older adult at 60, 62, 65. That's when you can start getting your senior discounts. It's 55. Some places you can get your senior discount, things like that. And those, like when Social Security was first established back in the 1930s, the retirement age was set at 65. The average American lifespan for a male at that time was 67. So we really expected you to retire at 65 and live a couple of years in retirement on Social Security, right? 2, 5, maybe a few people live longer than that, but most people, the average lifespan was 67. Today, the average lifespan is in the upper 70s, 77s. It's like 77.8 years now. So we are living on average a decade longer than we did then. And then that average, again, you've got people who are living shorter, but you got a lot of people who are living to 95, 105. We have more centenarians, which is people over 100, and what we call super centenarians, which are people over 110 than we've ever had before in recorded history. I mean, we are just living so much longer. And so when we think about retirement, the thing I want people to understand is that if you're going by the traditional retirement age of 65, you're probably looking at 2 to 4 decades of, quote, retirement. And that takes a lot more planning than just money. Money planning, financial planning is going to be incredibly important for that, but also social interaction. How are you going to have a social life? How are you going to have an emotional life? Because a lot of our world revolves around work. And a lot of people get their social interactions from work. And so if you retire and you're looking at 2 to 4 decades of life, what are you going to do with all that time? So that's a big piece of that planning or thinking ahead sort of process. We've got to reframe how we're thinking about retirement, because it is fun to retire and play golf or go on vacation or do those things that we're all excited about doing, but it's only fun for the short term. Vacations are fun because you go do them and then they end, and you come back and then you go do them again and you come back. Unlimited free time with no real structure or purpose in life actually makes people depressed, because they end up feeling like they're not needed, that they don't have any real value. And they start to kind of spiral if they don't figure out, what am I going to do now that's going to make me want to get out of bed on a Wednesday morning?
Yeah.
So that's a big piece of the kind of aging process, is thinking about that. Now, the other thing you mentioned was, how do we age well, right? I get 72-year-olds in my office who are caring for their 95-year-old parents, and the 72-year-old is in worse health than their 95-year-old parent. There is so much of that. There's so much that we can't control, right? Like, we have genetics that are going to predispose us to different things, but there's so much of it that we can actually control. So of course you're controlling, are you taking care of yourself? Are you exercising? Are you eating well? Those sorts of things. But what I think is the most interesting thing, Becca Levy up at the Yale School of Public Health studies ageism. And one of her most interesting findings is that your view, positive or negative, of aging, how you are looking at your own aging, impacts how well you are going to age. So, for example, she follows people over time. Like, she measures their attitudes towards aging and she follows them over time. And people who have positive views on aging, they're looking forward to getting older. They think it's going to be good, right? They have a positive outlook. They not only live on average 7.5 years longer than people who have negative views on aging, they also walk faster, recover faster when they do get injured or have some kind of sickness. They're more resilient, so they bounce back. They, even if they have genes that predispose them for dementia, people who have positive views are less likely to actually develop dementia. So this idea, and this has been replicated cross-culturally over and over again. So she has lots of data on this. So this is what you're thinking about yourself. Just what you were saying earlier. When you get up in the morning and you look in the mirror, are you going, oh my gosh, I've got more wrinkles or more gray hair? Or are you thinking, I can't wear that because I'm too old to wear that, or I'm too old to do that? Whatever it is, those thoughts are incredibly powerful, because then they help shape the behaviors you actually do to take care of yourself to age well or not, right? Because if you're thinking really negative thoughts like, oh, my knee hurts and I'm getting older and I just can't, I'm just getting older, there's nothing I can do about it. Well, then you're not going to go to the doctor, and you're not going to go to physical therapy, and you're not going to do things to help take care of yourself to age well. So I think this is the most interesting thing, because it's like, we can talk about genetics. We can talk about all kinds of things. This is just your
Yep.
thoughts, right? This is your own brain. And it is hard because we are in a very ageist society. We are being fed negative stereotypes about aging all the time because there is a lot of money to be made on you thinking negatively about your aging, right? There's a lot of skin cream to buy,
Yep.
and there's a lot of vitamins to sell you and things like that. So it is hard, but this is something that you can work on shifting. It actually won't cost you any money and can really impact your life.
I think that's so true. I've got a friend of mine. I think he's about 67 now. He retired from the law enforcement industry, and he lives in Florida, goes and fishes. I saw something the other day from him on one of the social media channels, him with, some fish, big fish he had caught, and looked like he was having fun. But I got to reading his caption, and he's like, retirement sucks. Don't ever, buy into getting, retirement because it stinks and it's boring and I'm about to figure out what to do. And like it was a very negative time. I'm looking at the picture. I'm like, there's him catching fish and all this stuff. Right. And I'm thinking, well, man, are you spending time with your grandkids? What sucks about this? Cause this looks good to me. I would be excited to go fishing and just, relax and take my time, catch some cool fish and, grill out and eat some nice fish.
It's not that that's not fun.
Yeah,
But it is fun. But it's when that's the only thing you have to do
that's right.
that then you start to go, what else am I going to do with my time?
To me, this is about engagement. So you're going to leave the workforce and then go do what? What is your job going to be when you get out of the workforce, right? Are you a full-time fisherman? Are you a full-time golfer? What have you defined as your life, and what are these expectations that you're setting there? And a lot of people come across, to me at least, as people that, they work hard, they build up their 401k, and they're like, I'm tired of my job. I'm tired of taking crap from my boss. I'm ready to retire. And they haven't really thought through that. And after about 3 to 4 months of sleeping in a little bit and watching The Price is Right and, kind of doing their routine of going up to the store and buying their lottery ticket and getting a drink and talking crap with the locals at the cafe and, doing whatever they do, like it just, they lack that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are the things that you're telling people to prepare them? You talked about the planning. When should people start thinking about retirement? When should they start planning and setting expectations? And how do you help people navigate that to set them up for success as they grow into that?
So I never think it's too early to start planning for your own aging process. I think everyone should be thinking about this. But in particular, as people are approaching retirement, I have been accused. People will say to me, well, you just want everybody to work forever. And that's not it at all. What I want people to do is, if you love your job, if you love what you do, I don't want you to think that you have to retire. I want you to think that you can do it for as long as you feel physically capable and you love what you do, keep doing it. That there should be no, people get to a certain age and everybody starts asking them, well, when are you going to retire? Well, when are you going to retire? Well, when are you going to retire? And that kind of makes people feel like, well, I guess I'm supposed to, right? Like, I guess I better. And I don't, if you love what you do, keep doing it. That's great, because that's giving you fulfillment in life, regardless of whether or not you need the money. If you don't like your job, if you are counting the days until retirement, absolutely retire. Get away from that job. Don't do that anymore. But then what I want you to think about is, what's the next thing that's going to give you purpose, that's going to motivate you, excite you to get out of bed on a Wednesday morning, for the next however many years. And that can really be anything. Like I met people, in the interviewees in the book, I've got people in there who retired and then they went off and started a nonprofit that they always wanted to do. They started new businesses. They're entrepreneurs. There's great data out there on how the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones who start a business after the age of 55. I've got people in there who are caregiving full time. I've got people who are volunteering, at pet shelters. They're like full-time volunteers. It doesn't really matter what you're doing. It just matters that you have something that's going to keep you engaged with the world, get you out of the house, and make you feel purposeful in your life. But if it's not your job, yeah, absolutely retire from that first job. Go back part-time if you only want to do that. That's what my mom's a good example of that. She was a school teacher for 30 years and she retired. She was so excited to retire. She was just thrilled to retire. And in about 6 months, she was like, yeah, I'm going to go back and one of the things she said was, I didn't realize how much of my social life was tied up with the school and with work. Yep. So 6 months in, she went back part-time. She went back and just did like reading specialist, part-time work, and did that for another probably 6 or 7 years after that first retirement. And that was great. She didn't want to work full-time anymore, it wasn't about money. It was about, I need the interaction. I need to feel purposeful. I need to get out of the house so my husband doesn't drive me crazy. All those things. I mean, there's a lot of things going on here. So that's what I want people to think about, that retirement planning is not just about money. It is about all these other social and emotional aspects of life that we also have to plan for.
Yeah. Well, I think the educational piece of this is important. I think that's why your work is so special, because you can educate people and guide them and direct them into, this part of their life, right? I help people, start businesses, grow a business, sell a business, go through the business life cycle, the business journey. I help people in their careers do what they do, and and navigate them, educate them, give them resources and whatever they need to be successful to meet their goals. And you do the same thing for people going through that journey, that part of the process. And I'm so surprised at how many people just don't understand options and what's out there and what they can possibly do. They allow themselves to kind of shelter in their homes and shelter in their little towns or wherever they're at, and just, not be as engaged. Speaking of retiring, I retired from my first career, which was being an officer in the Air Force. I did a little over 20 years. I retired from that. Yeah, there was a lot of planning, and, that was about a probably 4 to 5 year process to lead up to that. And then there was some decisions that need to be made, and per the situation, we made that decision. And then I started my second, almost third career at this point. And it was interesting that the military sent me something, probably about 4 or 5 months ago, and they've got a kind of a seniors program. People that have retired, people that had served honorably in the military are being asked to come back and do some, not to serve on the front lines and, do all that kind of stuff, but to mentor, to coach, to go in and talk to people and help some of the current leaders work through things where some of the more senior leaders may not have as much time to spend to mentor and show them and teach them and really walk them through some day-to-day things as they are growing and evolving in their careers. That was a really great program. Here in the town I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and we have a program called Leadership Louisville. This is a program where we take people from, and there's multiple programs you can be part of, for young people, aspiring people, leaders that are, more seasoned in their career to go through some different things, bring people together, network, build their groups, mastermind, learn leadership, training, and all that. It's a really great program. It's a pretty good benchmark for other cities to model after. One of the programs I thought was really, really cool that they've asked me about, I haven't done it yet, but I probably will, knowing me, it's a program called Encore. And that's a program for, business leaders or, corporate executives or people that have, been in the workforce and they've retired. Maybe they're, you know, between 1 and 10, 15 years after getting out of the workforce, where they can go and go into companies and do those things, or meet in these mastermind groups and give back and still add that value, because these people are smart. They're carrying around 4, 5, 6 decades worth of wisdom, lessons learned, and just with all the dynamics of our workforce as the boomers have kind of aged out and retired. We've got, millennials and Gen Zers that are making up the preponderance of our workforce today. And boy, they need, nothing against that group, but there's just a need for wisdom. There's a need for navigating this complex, fast moving world that we're in.
Mhm.
And boy, the education that goes around that to even know those kind of things exist is a game changer. So, how when do you typically start working with folks in this prize? Is it normally in their 50s or in their 60s, or kind of break that down for us a little bit?
I mean, it really depends on the individual, because you do have people who are, retiring or thinking about retirement in their 50s. If they've had a career that, they started in their 20s, well, 30 years, they're in their 50s and they're thinking about what they're going to do next. And then, but it really can be anybody as they're thinking about retirement, as they're approaching it, what is that process going to be and what am I going to do with my time? I think the youngest person I've worked with on this is in their mid 40s. And in that case, it's not that they were approaching retirement, but they were just thinking about kind of, I'll say end of life planning, but it was just like we talked about not only, what are you going to do with your retirement? What are you going to, you have all this time left. What are you going to do with all these years? But we were also talking about like getting your will in place and getting your healthcare powers of attorney and doing all the paperwork sorts of things too. But what I thought was really interesting with this particular gentleman, actually his wife told me this afterwards. She sent me a picture of this guitar that was in her living room. And she said, "This is your fault." And I was like, why is this my fault? And she said, because after we worked with you, her husband was like, I don't know why am I not doing the things I really want to do? It was like he had already decided in his mid 40s that he was almost done in some way. And we did all this work. And then he was like, I'm not done. I have all this time. I'm going to learn how to play the guitar. I have always wanted to learn how to play the guitar. And so he gone out and bought a guitar because he was like, I've got plenty of time to learn to play the guitar. And so, and he said to me later, he's like, you rewired my brain. You rewired how I'm thinking about my future, because I've been told this one story about what it's going to be like to grow older. It's going to be all downhill, and I'm going to retire and I'm just going to do all leisure stuff. And I didn't really think about, no, I still have all this time to do the things that I want to do that are interesting and that sort of stuff. And so the guitar was all my fault.
Well, that's a good thing to take responsibility for, Corinne.
I was like, I hope he learns to play it well. I hope it's not painful. Yeah.
I want to talk about another dynamic here that we haven't touched on yet, because I think it's important. Because people are living longer, people are quote unquote retiring, kind of like your mom, and then still finding something else in the workforce, part-time, maybe even full-time, and they're still wanting to be connected. They still want that social piece. They still want to, feel like they have purpose and they can give back and they can do whatever's important to them. But a lot of people I know in their kind of later 50s and especially in their 60s, there's this question of, kind of ageism in the workforce. People aren't going to hire me because I'm old. And, they're trying to do all these things to mask their age. And they, put a picture up on LinkedIn that's, when they were, back 20 years ago when they were, 25 years old or whatever. Right. And they're really nervous about that. They really feel that's a big deal. Is that a big deal in this day and age?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
How do we deal with that? How should we be thinking about that?
Well, for one thing, there's a big push for you to have like an ageless resume, in the sense that like on your resume, you don't put the year that you graduated from college. And you don't put age markers on there. Number one, this is a real thing. It's a big struggle for people on multiple levels. Number one, if companies are going through layoffs, a lot of people who are close to retirement age will be laid off or given early retirement. And so it's not a, hey, I'm ready to retire and it's going to be all fun. It's a forced retirement because they're saying, we're going to, you're close enough. We're going to go ahead and have you escorted out the door. And for a lot of people, that is quite traumatic because they still need to work, right? They still need the income. They're not ready to retire. And then when they start applying for new positions, if they make it to an interview, they feel like as soon as people figure out how old they are, they don't get past that initial interview. And then also, a lot of them feel like if the AI machine or whoever's reviewing the resumes, if they can tell how old they are, then they won't even give them the interview because of their age. And there's a number of reasons for that. Part of it is ageism in the sense that people have a bias that, an older worker won't be able to pick things up as quickly, won't be willing to work with the team, will be set in their ways, things like that. The data is completely opposite. Older workers are often more reliable. They want to learn new things. They're not against that. There's also a bias that companies think, oh, well, if we hire an older worker, they're going to want too much money. They're going to want, whatever salary they were working at a previous job. And for some older workers, that may be really important. But for a lot of older workers, that's not the top priority. They may just be looking more for the social and I want to be doing something purposeful aspect. The money may not be the biggest factor in the decision to go back to work. So it's worth having a discussion with an older worker just for those reasons. The other thing is there's a great case study with BMW in Germany. They realized that their workforce was aging. And that working in a BMW factory is a highly skilled job. So they realized that their workforce was aging, and they're like, we don't want to have all these people retire at once. What can we do to try to help keep them here? And so they created what would be the retirees line or the pensioners line. That's what they called it because it's pensioners in Germany. And they did things on that production line, like they had them rotate stations. So instead of doing one station all day long, 8 hours a day, they would do a station where this station used your legs a lot, this station used your arms, the next station used your brains. And it really helped. It really helped the productivity of the line. So much so that not only did they keep their older workers, because the older workers were doing well on this line, that became the most productive line in the entire company and the entire factory. And they ended up modifying all their production lines to be like the, quote, pensioners line. Because here's the thing, what's good for older workers is often stuff that is good for all workers. Rotating stations like that so that it wasn't so hard on your body doing the same thing over and over again, that was not only good for the older workers, it was good for everybody in the factory. And so they ended up modifying it, to be that same way. And that's the thing that we think, oh, we're going to have to make accommodations for an older worker. Well, maybe, but that doesn't mean that accommodation would not only be good for the older worker, but might be good for everybody in your business, right? Like that's the thing that we overlook a lot of times. And there's another study that was done with a call center. This is a little bit older, but it was back when you really had to make a phone call to like make a hotel reservation. And they had older workers answering the phone, and then they had younger workers answering the phone. And they found that the younger workers could make reservations faster, right? Like they made more reservations per hour than the older workers did. But the older workers had more reservations where the people actually came and stayed at the hotel. And so they were trying to figure out why. So the older workers were making more money for the company because those people actually came. Well, it's because when the older workers got the customer on the phone, they really talked to them about where are you going? What's the purpose of your stay? What kind of room are you looking for? Like they got all the details so that they made sure the reservation was really what the customer wanted. It was that customer service aspect that the older worker could provide that the younger workers weren't doing. They were just all about speed. How fast can I get this done?
Yeah.
That's another
Amazing.
thing that I think really plays out today. You know, a lot of our younger workers have grown up on technology, and they may be better at technology, but our older workers may be a lot better at customer service and that person-to-person interaction.
That's right. Yeah. With some of the younger generations, there are some studies that are showing, some of the gaps in the people-to-people skills, relationship building, that customer service concept. I just earlier today, I had a really good customer experience. I went up to, of all places, I went up to my local city government and I had to renew my auto tags, right? Get the new stickers put on there and the updated registration and all that kind of stuff. It's a pain in the neck. It's a major distraction. I hate doing it, but it was that time of year to do it. So I went up there and I waited in line for probably, I don't know, less than 10 minutes. This lady calls me up and I'd say she's, if I had to guess, I'd say probably, late 40s, early 50s. So I get up there and she's like, "So what all are you doing today?" And I was like, "Well, it looks like I'm updating my registration and my auto tags." She started laughing and she's like, "Yeah, but in addition to that, what else you got going on today? How's your Monday going?" I was like, "Actually, it's going pretty well. How about you?" "Yeah, things are going well." And she was just really bubbly and funny and making jokes and she kind of challenged me a little bit on some things. And it was, for going to nobody likes to renew their tags. Nobody likes going to the DMV. Nobody likes doing that kind of stuff, right? But it was probably the best experience doing that I can ever remember. I mean, the lady just had these people skills where she can just be kind of light on her feet and just talk to people like no big deal. And she was funny. We had some laughs and she got me thinking about things that I was thinking about that I had to do next after I left there. And it was really pleasant. And so on the way out the door, I saw the lady's boss is a somebody I know in the community, is an elected official. And I walked by, I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" I said, "Hey, really great job today, man. This is probably the best experience I have. You got a real winner on your hands down there." Her name was Heather. I said, "Man, Heather's really, really good at her job. Man, you need to promote her or something." She's like, "Yeah, she's got a personality, doesn't she?" And we just kind of laughed about it. But those people skills are important, especially in this highly competitive, global economy that we have. And so, Corinne, I just want to say thank you for all the great work you're doing out there, for taking some time to be on the show, sharing all of these really important, facts about the world we live in and how we should be thinking and preparing ourselves for these things. So just thank you for that. If people want to connect with you, they want to learn more about you and your work and your book and how to, kind of connect in these different ways we talked about today, what is the best way for them to contact you and have a conversation with you?
So they can just go to my website, which is CorinneAuman.com. And there you'll find information about me, ways to contact me. All my social media links are on that site. Access to the book is there, as well as I'll post a link to this podcast once it's up and going. And so you can learn more about me all in one place.
That's outstanding. So, folks, I highly encourage you to connect with Corinne. She's a really smart lady, very caring, very compassionate, really, really cares about what she does, knows what she's doing. She's a true expert in this space to help us navigate these different challenges, whether you're, getting out of the workforce, going back into the workforce, and all these dynamics that surround us getting older and navigating our lives. So you can live a healthier life. You can have more positivity. You can be well informed, right? I think one of the biggest takeaways for me today was she is such a great resource to help you be informed about your options. And when you're the most informed people usually make the best decisions. And so if you can do that, you'll definitely be successful. We're going to put all of her contact information into the show notes of the podcast here. So make it easy for you to connect and click and just go right to her pages and ways to connect with her. So folks, we're all getting older. You can't stop the aging machine, the aging process, but you can get the best outcomes possible. You can live a happier life. You can do things by simply planning, by sitting down and thinking about when you get into your 40s and 50s, that's a really good time to sit down and start talking to people that understand life after, 60 and the options and what may be best suited for you. They can help you understand how to stay engaged, how to have purpose, help you find your new purpose. Your new purpose may be different than your old purpose. It may be the same, may be different. Mindset. Corinne talked a lot about that today. Mindset is everything. How you view your world, your future, your daily activities determines everything going forward. It determines how long you live, how happy you are, how miserable you are, how depressed you are. You've got to find a way to connect to that purpose and stay positive in that and redefine your life differently. And that's a big challenge for a lot of us. A lot of us, our lives do revolve around our work. And when that work is over, what defines us at that point? And then so Corinne helps people do that. Great book, Keenagers. Highly recommend you guys read that. It's a great resource to walk through these things. So thank you again, Corinne. You're such a great person. Enjoyed having you on the show. So folks, that's it for today's show. Next week, we're going to be talking about some really cool things to help you be productive, to live a better life through technology, how to leverage technology. We've got all this technology around us all day long, and it weighs us down and it consumes us and it just eats away all of our time and it stresses us out. How to leverage it differently, how to leverage this to be more productive, how to make good decisions in your life. We got an expert on the show talking about that. Have a great week, everybody.